Well, hey everyone, it's Jonathan from Mr. Pearson Talks Books, and I wanted to go through a recap of all of the books that I read in the month of February. Turns out, as I was going through my list, I read or listened to 12 different books. So it was a wide variety. There were a lot of middle grade books in there. There were some adult fiction books. There were several audiobooks and even a graphic novel this month. So let's go ahead and, to be honest, I'm going to start with the worst book and then work my way up from there and just go through and talk about the books that I read. So a worst book that I read this month, it was The School for Whatnots by Margaret Peterson Haddix. And this book is about a wealthy child named Max who his parents think they're sending him to a school where he's the only human child. And they want him to go there so that he'll grow up to be a nice kid. He won't be mean to people and things like that. But come to find out that some of the other children that are going to this school aren't what Max's parents thought they were going to be. They actually end up being humans. And so it was just this conversation about rich kids having all this privilege and never having to experience anything difficult, and poor kids always having difficulties and things, which are important conversations that I think need to be had, but the book just didn't do it for me. And then it got really weird at the end and kind of turned, hey, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, hey, I'm gonna leave my entire empire of robots to you kind of thing. It was not great. I gave it 2.5 out of 5 stars. But from there, most of the other books that I read this month were fantastic. Starting at the beginning of the month, I read The First State of Being, which was the Newbery Award winner for this year. Absolutely fabulous book. It has some time travel elements about growing up and discovering who you are. Loved it. It was fantastic. Then I listened to a Gordon Corman book called Swindle, about a friend or a boy who, along with his friends, get swindled out of a very expensive baseball card, and they come up with this really elaborate heist in order to steal it back. And it's all about the planning that they go into and various things like that. It was really good. It's one of my favorite Gordon Corman books. Then I'm reading through all of the Goosebumps books this year, or at least attempting to. There's like 60 of them. So, but I read the first one, which was called Welcome to Dead House. It's about a family who discover that they have been gifted or they have inherited a house from the dad's long lost great uncle or some distant relation like that. So they move into the house and come to find out that things are not exactly the way they're supposed to be. For a middle grade book, it was surprisingly scary. There were some very tense moments in it. Listen to the second book in the Children of the Fox series, and this one was called Seekers of the Fox. It was a direct follow-up to the first one. It picks up right where the events of Children of the Fox leaves off, and it's a quest to discover some magical items that can be used to save one of their friends who, through a series of events, is destined to have something terrible happen to him. So they have to go on this quest, and there's a lot of intrigue, and there's backstabbing and betrayals and things like that take place. Fantastic book. Absolutely love it. Homerooms and Hall Passes, which was, I talked about it in another video about books for kids who love D&D. And this is about a group of friends who are D&D characters who get together to play a role-playing game about what it's like to be an ordinary person going to middle school. And then because one of them stole a cursed item, they find themselves actually in the game trying to be actual 8th graders going to middle school every day. It was a great flip on that whole tale, and it was a really fun book. I also read a graphic novel called Table Titans Club about a group of friends in middle school who are part of a Dungeons and Dragons club after school, and a new kid moves into the area, a girl, and they've never had a girl in the club before, but she ends up becoming a part of the club, and all of the interactions that take place there was great. There's a sequel coming out at some point. I don't read a lot of graphic novels, but I really did enjoy this one. Then I was working my way through a book called The Shadow of What Was Lost. It was about 700 pages. It's an adult fantasy novel. The first one, it's the first book in the Lacanius trilogy by James Islington. It was good. It was very confusing. Lots of names, lots of things taking place. I'm going to have to read the second one quickly because if I don't, I'm going to forget what happened in the first one and have to reread it before I can move on in the trilogy. But I enjoyed it, gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Then I also read Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. This is my absolute favorite Harry Potter book. I am trying to read through all of the Harry Potter books again, and Prisoner of Azkaban is my favorite. It was the first one. It was the first movie that I saw, and I had read all of the books when my first year of teaching is when I started reading them. And Prisoner of Azkaban is fantastic. Absolutely loved it. I also listened to a book about Theodore Roosevelt called The River of Doubt. And this is after Theodore Roosevelt lost his attempt to become the president for the 3rd time. He and his son Kermit and some other people, along with some folks from South America, they took an exploration down a river that was known as the River of Doubt. And it was very dangerous. At one point, they thought that the president was going to die. A lot of people got sick, and there was all kinds of stuff. It was a really good book. Really, really enjoyed it. I also read the second in the Goosebumps series called Stay Out of the Basement. It's about a girl and her brother, and their dad is acting weird, like strange, as he's doing these experiments down in the basement of their house, and they're trying to figure out what happens. And I got to tell you, the ending is you think you figured it out, and then there's just this one sentence that flips the whole thing on its head. That one was, so far, it's been one of my favorites of the Goosebumps that I've read. I also read another book. This was by Robert Crace. It was called The Big Empty. It's an Elvis Cole and Joe Pike novel. Definitely not for kids. This is definitely not a middle grade book. And it was for a mystery, was surprisingly emotional. It was reading, and it seemed like a simple missing persons case, and then you find out some details about what's going on, and it got dark quick. Like, it went to some places that I was not expecting. And after I finished it, I posted on my Facebook page that I'm gonna need a minute, because this one was hard to process, and the emotional fallout of finding out things about people that you thought you knew. And then, like I said, School for Whatnots was on my list, and I did not care for that. And then I finished it on March 1st, but I'm going to include it as part of my February wrap-up. And that was the 3rd book in the Fablehaven series, called Fablehaven in the Grip of the Shadow Plague. I tried so hard to finish it on March 28th, but ended up finishing it February 1st. But spent most of the last week of February reading it. It was interesting. It was probably about 100 pages too long. I could have definitely had some scenes cut out of it, but overall it continues the story. At one point, I told my wife, I said, I don't think I'm going to read any more of these. And then I continued reading the story and really, really liked it. So now I'm committed. I'm 3 books into the 5-book series, so I'm going to have to figure out what that is. So anyway, those are the 12 books that I read in February. Wait, please let me know what you read. What was your favorite book of February? You can leave that down in the comments. And again, as always, my name is Jonathan. This is Mr. Pearson Talks Books, and we'll see you in the next video.